They told us, know your place, lower your voice, return what was never yours.
There is something about Easter that asks us quietly but firmly to reflect on suffering, on sacrifice, on what is broken, and what must be restored. It is a season that reminds us that pain is not abstract, it is lived, it is carried, and too often it is inflicted. Today's episode is not comfortable, but it is necessary because what we are witnessing is not media scrutiny, it is something far more deliberate and far more dangerous. Welcome. This is Majesty Sussex Report, and I'm Antonio. Thank you for spending some of your valuable time here with us. Happy Easter.
Don't tell me to return the title. It was never yours to give. You built a throne, had a silence. We built a life, had a living. I am a queen in my rising, a princess in my becoming. You can't take what I carry. You can't silence what's coming. No, I won't return it. No, no, I redefine it. No, no. A princess is not a possession, not a headline, not a name.
Thank you for being here. If you hear any sort of noise in the background, plates being moved, table being cleared, I am spending Easter at my mom's place and family is here. So do forgive me for the background noise and so on. Not for the family because family is family and it's nice to be around family. But forgive me for the background noise. All right. So let's get on with it. The system that does not stop. Let's begin with what is verifiable. For 8 years, Prince Harry and Meghan Sussex have been the subject of sustained, negative, and often misleading coverage from segments of the UK press. That is not opinion, that is observable and verifiable. And it follows a recognizable structure: recycle old material, reframe it as scandal, ignore contradictory facts, repeat until it settles as perception. This week, that pattern surfaced again. A so called journalist, Charlotte Griffith, brought forward alleged messages from over a decade ago, long before Meghan Sussex was in Prince Harry's life. The coverage did not center on verification, it centered on implication. Even as elements of her account shifted under scrutiny, including claims she later described as a typo in court, those inconsistencies did not slow the headlines. That tells you something. This is not about truth discovery, it is about narrative maintenance. And once you see that, the question changes. Not what happened, but why is this being pushed again and again and again?
Here's something that I did not realize. So you know that woman that Prince Harry has been cheating on Princess Meghan with for 5 years since 2011 before he even met Princess Meghan? Well, it turns out that she's a journalist, right? And as soon as Prince Harry figured out that she was a journalist, he got contact. But what I also now did not know is that she's the same woman who has been hating the fact that Prince Harry and Princess Meghan refer to each other as my wife and my husband.
It drives me mad. They call each other my husband and my wife.
Like, that's her. Like, that's her. We're supposed to be basing all of this nonsense on a woman who's very clearly jealous and very clearly angry that Harry and Meghan are together and married. Like, imagine being so caught up on a man that you never really had a shot with, to the point where now, all these years later, I don't have the mental capacity to calculate how long ago 2011 was, but however many years ago that was, this woman is still holding on to the fact that she had a few flirty messages with this now married man. And to this day, she's annoyed that he calls his wife my wife. And she calls her husband my husband. And now she's in court testifying that he flirted with her. And this is the other thing I forgot to mention in my previous video. Like, all of this is happening in the context of Prince Harry suing members of the British tabloid press, right? Like, this is happening in the context of a legitimate issue that Prince Harry has with these people. And these are the stories they're pushing out, that, oh, he cheated on Meghan 5 years before he met her.
When coverage becomes consequence. Now we move from pattern to impact, because this is where the story stops being theoretical. A woman named Gemma O'Neill, some of you may be familiar with her already, an Australian podcaster and event organizer, booked Meghan Sussex for a women's retreat. This is the action. What followed was escalation. Her finances were examined, her past business challenges were amplified, her credibility was questioned across multiple outlets. The framing was not neutral, it was cumulative. And then something critical happened. She disappeared from public view. The media filled that silence with speculation. But the reality was this: she was pregnant. She was experiencing what she described as intense, frightening levels of online abuse. She stepped back to protect her mental health. And then she lost the baby. Let's really pause here, because this is where discipline matters. We do not assign causation without medical evidence, but we do acknowledge context. She herself described the environment as disgusting and scary, and the coverage did not stop, even during grief. That is not scrutiny. That is pressure without restraint. And it mirrors something we have already seen. In 2020, Meghan Sussex publicly shared her own miscarriage, describing the emotional and physical toll during a period of intense public pressure. Two different women, one pattern: relentless exposure, sustained pressure, no pause. At some point, we must ask, not emotionally, but rationally, what responsibility does a system carry when harm consistently follows its targets?
I wanted to touch on something briefly around stories that you might have seen that have been written about me. And I actually wrote down what I wanted to say around this, because I do feel like I'm probably not the sharpest right now with how I'm feeling. So I know you might have seen the media coverage about me recently, because there's been a series of stories that have been written that, to be honest, are pretty hurtful and in many parts inaccurate. And I need to be clear here that there are legal reasons why I can't go into detail, which is why I haven't, and it's also why I won't. But what I will say is this, is that I stand by my integrity, I stand by my work, and I stand by how I've conducted myself in business over a very long career. And what's been particularly hard is seeing assumptions made about things like me apparently going quiet. But the reality was that I was receiving a level of online abuse that was quite frankly disgusting and felt very scary. And so I made the decision to step back from my personal Instagram to protect my mental health while I was pregnant. Obviously, since then, I've been going through something very personal with the loss of a baby. None of that has anything to do with me having something to hide. It was about me taking care of myself during a very difficult moment. And I guess what I think is disappointing is when reporting crosses the line from journalism into something that feels far more like creating noise or even bullying. And that's just not something that I'm ever going to engage with. I know who I am. The people who matter in my life know who I am. And that matters a lot more to me than a clickbait headline. So I'm not going to give it oxygen beyond this, but I just wanted you to hear directly from me. So as I mentioned earlier, on a personal note, given that I'm feeling, a bit full of grief right now, I'm going to take a little break from the podcast, which I really hope you guys can understand. I just need to have a moment to process and heal and I guess just let it all out. Now, of course, I know we still have our Her Best Life retreat coming up in, just over 2 weeks. And honestly, with how I'm feeling right now, I really can't think of anything more special than being in a room with our community, because our community are the most beautiful, warm, loving, friendly, fun group of people. And really that's something that I feel like I'm going to need in my life in a few weeks. So I'm very, very much looking forward to seeing all of you there who are coming. Obviously, I'm very much looking forward to interviewing Meghan, Duchess of Sussex too. I have been in awe of how she handles all of the public scrutiny she receives as well. So there's a lot that I want to ask her. I know that the team are trying really hard to get some more last-minute spots. So if they do open up, make sure that that you've registered if you're interested. So I'd really love to see you there. I look forward to seeing you there. And please forgive me for taking a little break and for probably the somewhat somber podcast this week. I know it's probably not like the normal podcast, but I wanted to explain what's been going on for us. So thank you as always for listening. And more than ever, can I please say to all of you listening, each of you individually, please go and find your joy.
The incentive to exploit. Now let's step back, because Prince Harry himself has already named the broader issue, not as a personal grievance, but as a systemic situation. In his address on privacy and media systems, he said something that cuts through all of this, that they are industries that behave as though they own people's privacy and decide what qualifies as public interest. He went further. He described these systems as designed for extraction, not protection. That word matters, extraction, because it explains behavior that otherwise feels excessive. Why continue coverage even when facts are weak? Why pursue individuals adjacent to a public figure? Why escalate narratives instead of correcting them? Because the system is not optimized for the truth. It is optimized for attention. And attention, especially outrage, has value today. Once you understand that the moral confusion disappears completely, the behavior is not accidental. It is aligned with incentive.
Systems optimized for extraction are doing exactly what they were designed to do. And this is no longer a debate, no longer opinion, it is fact. So what has failed isn't the technology, but the alignment between power, incentives, and responsibility. Because power, especially at this scale, demands responsibility. And where responsibility is absent, harm becomes predictable and inevitable. Which means the challenge in front of us is not simply better compliance, but better alignment between business models and human outcomes. And to get to that alignment, we have to peel back another layer, because business models don't just appear, just like technology doesn't just come to be. These systems didn't emerge on their own. They were designed. And the outcomes we're seeing, good and bad, are a direct result of the choices built into them. But that's not what we're told most of the time. We're told, by those that are incentivized to tell us so, that technology needs room to breathe. That innovation can't have guardrails, or else it will be held back from its potential. But history shows the opposite. The most transformative industries, aviation, medicine, finance, did not succeed in the absence of safeguards. They succeeded because trust was engineered into the system. Safety didn't limit innovation, it made it scalable. Now, we've regulated aspects of data use, but we haven't changed the fundamental reality. Participation in the digital world still requires surrendering control over your personal information. And when access depends on agreement, and agreement isn't negotiable, consent becomes a formality, not a safeguard. And even where laws exist, systems are often designed around the edges, perhaps complying with the letter while bypassing the intent.
When ideas are dismissed, then reproduced, and then there is another layer, quieter, but just as revealing. Meghan Sussex launches a lifestyle brand, as ever. It is criticized, mocked, dismissed, framed as unserious. Huh. And now we see something else. A former palace insider launches a new brand, one that mirrors the same aesthetic language, tone, and presentation style. Minimalistic visuals, elevated language, lifestyle positioning. Oh, suddenly the framework is familiar, even praised. This is not new, my friends. Historically, cultural innovation, particularly from Black communities, has often followed a pattern: dismissed at origin, replicated by others, validated only after translation. What we are observing here fits that broader pattern of cultural and creative appropriation. And again, the question is not emotional, it is structural. Why is something devalued in one context and elevated in another? This is not coincidence. That is hierarchy. The cost of association. And perhaps the most chilling part of all this is not what happens to Harry and Meghan. It is what happens to everyone around them. Gemma O'Neill is not a royal. She is not a political figure. She is not a global institution. She is a woman who organized an event, who hosts a podcast. And yet, she was investigated, framed, pressured. That sends a message, not written, but understood. Association carries risk. And when association becomes dangerous, isolation becomes the goal. That is how systems enforce silence without ever issuing an order. Easter asks us to reflect on suffering, but also on responsibility. Because suffering, when repeated, is not random. It is produced, sustained, allowed. And the question that lingers is not whether headlines can be harsh. We know they can. The question is whether a system, over time, begins to lose its sense of boundary. When scrutiny becomes pursuit, when narrative becomes weapon, when human beings become collateral. This is no longer about liking or disliking public figures. It is about recognizing a pattern and deciding collectively whether we accept it or whether we finally call it what it is. It's not noise, it's not bias, but something far more deliberate and far more consequential. It is evil.
They told her, know your place, lower your voice, return what was never yours. But they never understood what we carry, who we are. They crowned a word, then broke the women who wore it, turned silk into silence, turned grace into a cage. History watched as they smiled for the cameras, while the weight of a title became a quiet kind of pain. But listen closely, we are not echoes of their system, we are not bound by their rules, no. We are something older, something deeper, something they could never control. Don't tell me to return the title, it was never yours to give. You built a throne out of silence, we built a life out of living. I am a queen in my rising, a princess in my becoming. You can't take what I carry, you can't silence what's coming. No, I won't return it. No, I redefine it. No, I redefine it. Ooh. A princess is not a position, not a headline, not a name. She is the moment she chooses to rise beyond the shame. A queen is not your approval, not your paper, not your crown. She is the fire she walks through, and the strength that won't bow down. Say it louder, for every woman dismissed and diminished, for every voice they try to erase. We are not asking permission, we are claiming our place. Don't tell me to return the title, it was never yours to give. You built a throne out of silence, we built a life out of living. I am a queen in my rising, a princess in my becoming. You can't take what I carry, you can't silence what's coming. No, I won't return it. No, I redefine it. No, I redefine it. Ooh. You can keep your castles, you can keep your rules, you can keep your narrow definitions of who we're allowed to be, but you will not, you will not, you will not, you will not take the dignity that lives inside of me. We are daughters of something greater, not your system, not your fear. We are building our own kingdoms, and it's already here. Don't tell me to return the title, it was never yours to give. You built a throne out of silence, we built a life out of
There comes a point, quietly at first, then unmistakably, when a pattern ceases to be coincidence. And what we are witnessing is not a collection of unfortunate headlines or the occasional excess of a competitive press. It is a system that isolates, a system that repeats, a system that punishes proximity. For over 8 years now, Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, have not simply been criticized, they have been encircled. And anyone who steps within that circle is marked. Gemma O'Neill learned that in a matter of weeks. Yeah, I said weeks. That is all it took for scrutiny to become intrusion, for curiosity to become pressure, for headlines to become something far more invasive. And yet, what she experienced, however painful, however unacceptable, is only a fraction of what Meghan Sussex has endured for nearly a decade. That is not exaggeration, it is duration. And duration in this case is the evidence. Because no honest observer can look at this relentless cycle, story after story, year after year, and still pretend this is organic. It is not. It is organized, a well oiled machinery. Book release in sequence, each one promising revelation, each one recycling grievance. Tom, you know who, wrote another book, Betrayal, that's the title. Now, again, framing Meghan as a manipulator, a threat, a destabilizing force. It is the sequel in all name to Revenge, because one attempt was never enough. Right, Tom? And then we have Russell Myers or Mayers. His book is titled William and Catherine, The Intimate Inside Story. Marked as insight, but let's be honest. What it did was just repeat that familiar Fallout narrative. And Hugo Vecker's, oh Lord, long viewed account, reaching backwards into history to place blame forward onto Meghan and Harry. Different authors, different covers, same gravity, same direction. This is not publishing, it is reinforcement, a chorus not of inquiry, but of alignment. And behind that chorus stands an institution that says absolutely nothing. King Charles III, the head of that institution, the figure to whom all of this ultimately orbits, has offered no meaningful interruption, no boundary, no correction. And that silence is not neutral, because the relationship between the monarchy and the press is not incidental, it is symbiotic, a long standing, mutually beneficial arrangement, what many have described and what increasingly appears to function as a contract. Access in exchange for narrative, protection in exchange for compliance. And when that arrangement is disturbed, when someone refuses to participate, refuses to be managed, refuses to play the role assigned, the system responds, not always loudly, but consistently. Tilt the coverage, elevate the criticism, isolate the individual, and if necessary, extend the story outwards until even those who stand nearby feel the weight of it. That is how control is maintained, not through decree, through repetition. So we arrive at the question that matters, not whether the coverage is harsh, but whether it is just. Not whether books can be written, but whether they are part of a pattern. Not whether silence exists, but what that silence protects. Because at some point, a society has to decide whether it still recognizes the difference between scrutiny and targeting, between journalism and narrative enforcement, between criticism and cruelty. Easter, in its essence, is not only about resurrection, it is about truth revealed under pressure. And the truth here is not complicated at all. When harm becomes predictable, when patterns become undeniable, when silence becomes participation, then the responsibility no longer sits with the subject of the story. It sits with those who continue to tell it this way, and with those who continue to accept it. At some point, it must be said plainly, without ornament, without hesitation. None of this is normal. None of it is justified. And it should not be tolerated at all. I truly appreciate the time you spent on today's episode. Thank you very much. If you are not a subscriber, please do consider subscribing. And if you are a subscriber already, do remember to put your notification on. Also, as the algorithm would like us to do remember to like, comment, and share. It's much appreciated. Thank you once again for your time. Happy Easter. Take care.
My help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber.